So one of the few bright spots from the weekend was Will Smith's reaction to whatever Jurickson Profar had going on Saturday night. And if you missed it somehow, Gavin Stone was absolutely rolling when Profar squared around to show bunt. He was leading off the fifth inning. At the time, Stone still had a perfect game. The next pitch after that was inside, and it was up a little bit. Nothing really egregious. I mean, I think it was just like your average kind of up and in pitch, but Profar took exception to it for whatever reason. He kind of he stared at Stone, had some words for him. Will Smith then stood up for his teammate, had to, the home plate umpire had to kind of keep him separated from Profar. Benches cleared, although, it wasn't really all that hostile. You had Manny Machado getting a last handful of sunflower seeds before he sort of jogged out there. Shohei Ohtani, who kind of stood there like he was smiling, staring. I forget the Padres reliever's name.
Matsui, I think.
Is it Matsui? Let me see. We could probably look that up. But I think he's also from Japan as well. So didn't get too crazy. But then the most probably surprising of it all is Will Smith then does a post-game interview with David Vassay on the field, and completely, like, in my opinion, out of like nothing I've ever seen from him. Will Smith said, quote, talking about Profar, "I don't know what his deal was. He thought we were trying to throw at him. I don't know why we would have thrown at him. He's kind of irrelevant, but I don't know. He started mouthing off and everybody came out. I don't know why he was throwing such a big deal about that." End quote. Blake, would you ever have predicted Will Smith taking, any sort of shot like that? We've been, we've interviewed him. We've been part of interviews with him. Is this something you would have seen coming?
Yeah, I was completely surprised by that quote. For context, for like all the people who don't know, it is incredibly hard to get a good quote out of Will Smith. Like, you can ask him pretty much anything and he'll give you a very short answer that doesn't say a whole lot. Like, it's fine, that's who he is. So when I heard he said that, like, I was just very shocked. I'm very surprised he said it too, because the Dodgers typically aren't a team that likes to give away like that bulletin board material. They usually kind of focus on themselves and say, like, we're going to do our thing. If they want to go do something else or different, like, it's not going to affect us as much. Like, we're just going to keep doing our own thing, focus on ourselves, and kind of ignore the noise. So for him to come out and kind of give them that bulletin board material kind of told me like he was pretty upset about the situation, because I don't really see any other reason he'd actually speak out about that, especially like to that extent. Like, it's one thing to just say, yeah, he was probably lost on the account. I'm not really sure what happened there, but we've kind of moved on from that. So for him to like really say like, oh yeah, he's kind of irrelevant, I don't know why he's causing these issues, definitely caught me off guard there.
Yeah, and Hawaiian Kira says, "LOL must be the best quote of his so far." I mean, quickly looking, like trying to think back through Will Smith's interviews since he's been up, I have to agree. Like, I don't think there might have been one or two times where maybe he has unintentionally said something funny, or just he has a little bit of a dry sense of humor, so maybe something like that came across. But in terms of like a quote really sticking out, I definitely think this is it. It is worth noting that when Smith was then approached by Sportsnet LA and reporters in the clubhouse after the game, and it was brought up again, he was much more subdued. He still expressed some dismay and confusion with Profar, but he definitely didn't call him irrelevant again. Blake, then, so that's Saturday night. Now, Sunday, we're back. It's a national broadcast, ESPN Sunday Night Baseball, which I know everybody loves. And in kind of a fun coincidence, if you will, Profar was mic'd up for Sunday Night Baseball. And I know it did get brought up. So what can you tell us that he said in case people missed that?
Yeah, so Profar pretty much took credit for it. He said he kind of got lost in the situation and didn't realize what was going on fully there. He basically said, like, yeah, I get now that it was a perfect game going on and they weren't going to try and hit me and put a runner on base, especially in a close game. So I do think we have to give him some credit and props for being a bit of a pro about the whole situation and not coming out here and like kind of trashing the Dodgers back. And just, you don't want to make these things into bigger narratives. Like, just move on from it. It's not going to matter. No one's going to care about it in a week or anything. Like, I'm sure it'll come up a bit on social media throughout the season and maybe for the next few years, but like, none of the players really care at the end of the day. They're just doing their jobs. So it's good it didn't get more blown out of proportion. And I do tip my cap a bit to Profar for taking credit for his mistake there of starting that kind of whole benches clearing argument.
So I'll push back a little bit. Two things. One, yes, great. I will give Profar credit for not, like responding to Will Smith and getting upset type thing, if you will. Fine. But the whole, oh, I didn't realize he had a perfect game thing going, like, fine. But also that pitch really wasn't even anything egregious. Like it wasn't at his head. It wasn't behind his back. Like it was just a pitch that was up and in, that if you watch baseball, you see what, hundreds of, maybe thousands of them in any given season. So that's that. Two, maybe this gets swept under the rug, but let's also remember Clayton Kershaw and Profar got into it at Petco Park back in 2021. And just as a refresher for that was Kershaw was upset with how Profar swung at a pitch. A check swing strikeout was overturned because Profar said that there was catcher's interference. He kind of got upset with the umpire, and then the umpires ended up reviewing it. It did get overturned, so Profar was given first base. Profar and Kershaw were yelling at each other, had to be separated, and at the time, that was also the second game in a row that some tension boiled over between the Dodgers and Padres during that series. So a little bit to your point, like, do I expect significant amount of carryover moving forward? Probably not, but this might be something to keep in mind when the Dodgers and Padres play again from May 10th through 12th down in San Diego.
There's always a little something that comes up between the two teams. It does feel like the Padres sometimes get that little brother mentality. Like they know the Dodgers and Giants are the main rivals, but they kind of want to push themselves into that mix and be considered one of the top teams in not just the NL, but in baseball, and be competitive with the Dodgers every game. So I do think they kind of play a little more competitively and up their game versus the Dodgers. And sometimes tensions do tend to flare a little bit more when those kind of things happen. So even if it's like completely behind them for that situation, I'm sure there'll be something else that comes up.
Yeah, perhaps. And look, credit to Profar. He ultimately got the last laugh. He had the bases clearing double. Now here we are on Sunday night, the next day after the whole sort of dust up, and that ended up proving to be the difference for the Padres.